How are you? How's everyone doing? Good afternoon, let's get to the news. It's 1:46 p.m. on April 17th. The month is already passing by and things are taking twists and turns. Some say there's an agreement, some say there's not. And well, they're attacking each other. Alright, let's get into the details of what's happening in Russia, what's happening around the world, and the international reactions. Europe is already responding. Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has already reacted. Macron, George Amelon, and others as well. We'll be looking at the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're watching live or catching the replay, I appreciate it if you give it a like and share it. Help us keep the channel going every day, bringing you information and updates about what's happening around the world. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's get into the details and the information. A big shout out to Panterita and to everyone else who's here, to Eliseo, to Jose Dominguez, to Wendy. Greetings all the way to New York. That's great. So let's get into the details and the information. Let's start with this image. Well, it's surprising. Let's take a look. It's this image and actually more images from Saudi Arabia. With this hailstorm that has been reported in recent days, which, well, has left this scene. Rocks full of ice, covered in ice, making this place look even more inhospitable than it really is. Well, another surprising image is the following. It's this operation by Ukraine involving drone attacks, which continue to be a key part of their offensive. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces have been destroying the Russian secret drone technology center with precision strikes. In the dawn, another image that draws attention is Macron's reaction to everything that's happening regarding Iran. Let's listen.
We are going to strengthen and accelerate the planning we have already started, coordinated with the United Kingdom, to establish a mission that will be neutral, completely separate from any of the belligerents, in order to support and secure the merchant ships that transit through the Gulf. Starting next week, there will be a planning meeting in London, and at the same time, of course, diplomatic actions will continue. And there will be total and close coordination with the Americans and the Israelis. We have already implemented, as far as France is concerned, substantial measures in the region to protect our nationals, reassure our partners in the area, and enable us to deal with any eventuality. For example, France has a robust naval force in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea near the refuge. A substantial part of all this will be used, some in the Eastern Mediterranean, some in the Red Sea, and some will be allocated to the effort I just described. So the message from...
Let's turn to another message, this time from Giorgia Meloni.
Italy is willing to participate in that framework, providing a certain number of naval units, according to what the Italian Parliament authorizes under our Constitution. But that is in line with things we have done in the past with other missions. The mission is Aspides, which was a mission implemented in an area near the Strait of Hormuz, so I think we can consider it a good example. Today's mission is...
This is the example and the reaction that comes from Giorgia Meloni, but the German Chancellor Emmers has said the following. Let's hear about these matters and also about the nuclear weapons that Iran might try to have. Let's listen.
Achieve a lasting end to this war. Our message, also in coordination with all our partners, is that Iran must put an end to its nuclear program. It must stop attacking Israel and the Gulf states, and it must reopen the Strait of Hormuz in a reliable, permanent way and without any payments, allowing free maritime passage.
Another reaction that stands out is from the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
I can confirm that together with France, the United Kingdom will lead a multinational mission to protect freedom of navigation as soon as conditions allow. This will be a strictly peaceful and defensive mission, aimed at reassuring commercial shipping and supporting demining. We invite all nations interested in the free flow of global trade to join us. Some have already expressed their willingness to contribute.
We will take this That's part of what comes up in this comment from the United Kingdom, but Donald Trump says the following.
You know Lebanon, right? So will they work with Hezbollah?
If they fire Jake Sullivan, sir,
Are they acquiring Iranian oil? What? Are you still interested in acquiring Iranian oil after that? Well, we'll see. I mean, we have a very good relationship with Iran right now, as hard as that may be to believe. And I think it's a combination of about 4 weeks of bombings and a very strong blockade. The blockade might be even more powerful than the bombings, if you want to know the truth. What's that?
well, how have you been? How's it going? We'll also look at different reactions on other topics before moving on to what's happening in Russia. Changing the subject, but also important in terms of international reactions, there's a comment from the United States about the judicial reforms that have taken place in Mexico. Let's hear the United States' opinion on this. And well, to the community that's watching live, we'll also talk later about what's happening with the alert that the United States has issued due to a series of storms. It's already at level 3. There are 50 million people under alert. We'll also talk about what's happening. This is about Syria, the reaction, by the way, from the United Kingdom and the United States, and about Ukraine from the Secretary of the Army. Not the Secretary of Defense, but the Secretary of the Army, a Republican who, well, this Discord, right? Who has made a very interesting comment about the issue of Ukraine, huh? Very interesting, but we'll look at that in a moment. Let's go to what's happening right now with Congress's reaction. In the United States Congress, from the United States government at a hearing where they are specifically asked about the issue of judicial reforms in Mexico, a huge topic. And to the community that's just joining, you already know what to do, you already know how to help the channel, so I won't say more, let's get into the details.
I have promoted deeper security cooperation with Mexico and introduced a resolution in Congress expressing deep concerns about the constitutional reforms that radically change Mexico's judicial system. I hope that this administration is also extremely concerned about these developments. We know that this is a limiting factor for American investment in Mexico. The judicial reforms in Mexico will leave judges exposed to the influence of the People's Republic of China or transnational criminal organizations. Since you became the SBO for Western Hemisphere Affairs, how many times has an official from the Trump administration publicly spoken about judicial reforms in Mexico? Chico.
I can't count how many times publicly, but we have had repeated conversations with Mexico about this issue. I think, as you know, we can't say that having elected judges is ipso facto incompatible with the rule of law, since we have them in many states in the United States. But what we are saying, and we've done this together with the American investment community in Mexico, is that judges are needed. Qualified judges who are independent, who are not at the service of the cartels, the Chinese, or anyone else, and that's why it's an issue that concerns us. We have made that clear, but I think that's the main driving force on the Mexican side. If they want to attract investments, they need to do things even within the framework they've adopted so that people have confidence in their judicial system and that it won't be used against investors. It's definitely a work in progress. Thanks.
It's a work in progress. Well, there it is, right? It's something they're trying to understand. They see negative points, they see positive points, but it's something that especially worries investors. That the judicial branch could be influenced, as they say, by organized crime groups or even by foreign countries like China. It's not good that it doesn't have that independence that's so necessary, right? That's the concern they have, and well, they're trying to analyze this interesting topic more deeply. Let's also move on to this other matter.
The recognition by any country of the legitimacy of the Israeli occupation of the Syrian Golan, I think that recognition is invalid because that's a right of the Syrian people and not of any state. A state can give up part of its territory if its people agree to it, but it can't sell or recognize someone else's land as Israel's, like what happened with President Trump's recognition of the occupied Golan as part of Israel. On the other hand, the international community continues to support Syria's right to this land. In the last vote, we gathered more than 134 countries from around the world to recognize that the Golan is, without a doubt, Syrian land and that it is occupied by the Israelis. Negotiations go through several stages. First, there was a ceasefire agreement between Syria and Israel. The 1974 agreement has lasted for more than 50 years. Israel has seriously violated it through its breaches after the fall of the previous regime on December 8th. Now we are entering the first stage, which is to seek a security agreement that guarantees Israel's withdrawal to the lines of 74 and to establish new rules to either comply with the 74 agreement or modify it in a way that guarantees the security of both parties. Then, if this is successful, maybe we will get involved in long-term negotiations to resolve the issue of the occupied Golan Heights.
A diplomatic way of talking about an invasion as well that has been pending between Syria and Israel for many years. It's also a way of talking about it through dialogue. I mean, saying we have to talk about it, we have to discuss it, we have to see what some say, what others say. And in any case, to reach an agreement that gives both parties a sense of security in this region of the world. Well, another pending issue brought up by the new Syrian government, which is also key for a prosperous and peaceful future in the Middle East. Another issue that draws attention is the reaction during these calls or conversations about the blockade that continues, by the way, in the Strait of Hormuz and is still being enforced by the United States. I mean, Iran said we've already opened the strait completely. The United States says it's closed, but only for Iranian ships, and well, this video comes up.
This is the U.S. Navy CEU 115. We request that you return to your home port in Iran. Do you copy? Over.
Understood, sir. Thank you very much. Copy, copy, sir. We're heading back to Iran. We're heading back to Iran. Thank you.
Blue Sky 4, this is the U.S. Navy CEU 115. I understand that you will return to your previous port of call in Iran. This is the U.S. Navy 115 standing by on channel 16 out.
Well, that's part of it. In the end, well, the ones who respond are captains of oil tankers or gas ships or whatever, civilians, right? And well, they're not going to get involved with the one that's going to force its way through. Of course not, if a group of military ships is telling you, hey, you have to go back to the Iranian port. Well, okay, I'll just go back and that's it. They're not going to get into trouble. And that's what's been happening these last 3 or 4 days. As for the Strait of Hormuz closure from the United States point of view, for now it remains closed in that sense. Now, another very interesting topic is what this Discroll says. Daniel P. Discroll, the Secretary of the Army, who makes the following comment about Ukraine. Listen to this.
The United States Army has supported and accompanied the Ukrainians since the first day of the war. I have been in Kyiv. I have spent a lot of time with many of the Ukrainian leaders, and they have fundamentally changed the way human beings face each other in conflicts. They have done an absolutely incredible job innovating, and I have publicly stated that we are learning a lot from them and that we are adapting to many of the lessons they have taught us.
Well, this hearing is interesting because the Secretary of the Army, this Driscoll, acknowledges what has been learned in the armed conflict. And that's also a message for Donald Trump because, well, there was or had been talk of stopping support for Ukraine. And this, well, there are also movements happening internally, even among Republicans who would be saying, hey, we've learned and we've seen that. The Ukrainian proposal is now serving as the basis for how a modern war is fought. In which, yes, of course, there are trenches, but also the use of robots, drones, and basically constant adaptation. A country has not been transformed in order to defend itself from an invader in that case. And an issue in which we have seen, for example, in Iran and in other countries, signs of learning from that war, on both sides. Pay attention to that very interesting topic, but speaking of this, there are massive movements. Russia is making massive moves right now. Let's go into the details of what is known. Russia is reportedly mobilizing 20,000 additional troops toward eastern Ukraine, according to Ukrainian intelligence cited by the Financial Times. Let's go to the area where this movement is taking place, but what we can see is that in this region, in this area, troops are increasing tremendously. They've had heavy personnel losses in this area over the past few months. Given this, the war's pace doesn't seem to be slowing. On the contrary, in Russia, they want to speed it up by sending more soldiers, possibly into a situation where they won't come back alive. The strategic objective would be to take full control of the Donetsk region before September, a goal that would be difficult at this point. At the very least, the movement indicates preparation for a new large-scale offensive in the southeast, which could significantly intensify the fighting in the coming weeks. Well, we'll see if that happens or not. But Donetsk is a crucial region that they want to include as part of the agreement that could be reached by the end of the year. If it happens, the possible offensive suggests that Russia may be looking to change the pace of the war, trying to consolidate certain territories. Also, the facility that has lost external power supply is the one in Zaporizhia. By the way, do you remember the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, the largest in Europe? Well, it has been. It's an issue that constantly causes concern. Let's see, right now it's being reported that there are constant blackouts, even lasting for days, at the nuclear plant. Why does that matter? If that nuclear plant doesn't receive power, cooling the nuclear reactors, this can cause a huge problem. I mean, a nuclear accident. The supply has been restored after being without power for a moment during those periods. It's not a full-day blackout, but there are frequent outages all day where the power keeps going out and coming back on. According to the reports, this is restored almost immediately. The IAEA, the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency, warns. They warn that nuclear safety remains unstable, vulnerable in the face of this conflict. The combination of offensive actions and nuclear risk means that this is far from over, and at any moment this could escalate to other levels. Another issue that also draws attention: the supervisor of Trump's mass deportation plan has resigned. His name is Todd Lyons. This person, he's basically the acting director of ICE, and he was supposed to stay there until May 31, but he has apparently already left the position. The acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, submitted his resignation yesterday. He submitted his resignation letter to the new Secretary of Homeland Security, Mark Weinmullin, after having been in charge of overseeing the Trump administration's mass deportation plan. The decision was already announced, and well, it seems to me that he will possibly still be there for a few more weeks. That is, he will actually be there until May 31st. He was going to continue indefinitely, but apparently he didn't want the position. Well, the point is that he's out. For what reason? Who knows, but he's out on May 31st. I think that's his complete exit. No, he can't just leave the position like that. Another thing that draws attention is this image. Let's see if we can... Well, it's not just an image, it's a report that's being given right now, in which a few minutes ago we mentioned the Iranian uranium. Well, check this out. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran. This is being reported by the Iranian agency, NIM, which is basically an agency of the regime, right? The Iranian regime claims that Iran's enriched uranium is as sacred to them as the soil of that country, and that it will not be transferred anywhere else under any circumstances. They declare it, so you say, well then what's going on? I mean, they say. Donald Trump says that if the uranium is going to be sent, they'll have it just fine, no trouble, no problems. And then the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs says, not a chance, that it's not going to happen, that they're not going to send the uranium to that country. I mean, the United States is not going to have it. They're going to keep it because it's something sacred to them, and that's the end of it, right? So I insist the agreement is hanging by a thread, right? Also, during an interview with CBS News, President Trump claims that Iran has agreed to Iran will stop supporting terrorist proxy groups in the Middle East like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. In other words, supposedly, Iran is no longer going to support them. Honestly, you have to be very naive to believe something like that, right? It's not going to happen. They're going to keep supporting their groups indefinitely without any problem. They've kept doing it all this time, and they're going to keep doing it. Believe anything else if you want. Well, you can believe that too. You're free to believe whatever you want, but at the end of the day, they've made this very clear. And the support for these groups will continue because they're part of them. It's not like they can stop supporting what's part of them, period. Now, Trump wants to sell the idea that they basically control Iran, that they control what the Revolutionary Guard does and doesn't do. But that's not the case. I think the Revolutionary Guard already realizes they'll just agree to everything, like with Sid Rodriguez, and nothing happens. That's the issue here. Now, another topic that also draws attention in what's happening in the world is something very local maybe, but it did catch my attention. IPN students take over the channel to report the embezzlement of resources. I mean, they were given airtime on Channel 11 to discuss the issue, and they even say they're going to protest at the World Cup because of this situation. Students from IPN took over Channel 11's facilities, from what I understand. I don't know if they were lent to them, if they took them, maybe they took them, but they're asking for the resignation of their general director. They claim that IPN is in decline and point to the new foundation. They call it fraudulent and also criticize the elimination of trusts. And well, this is part of what was seen on Channel 11. Let's listen.
The Biological Sciences Group at the National Polytechnic Institute, joined by the Higher School of Economics and the School of Medicine. After 2.5 hours of waiting to be heard, we have finally been given the opportunity to issue a statement not only to the entire Polytechnic community.
Well, this is part of the publication that was made in which, well, they have stated their points. They even talk about the possibility of preventing the World Cup. They are calling on other students to join the protests and the demands in response to what they are claiming. This is an issue that has already been discussed for some time. As they say, there is a tremendous lack of resources, which they express. At least that's what the assembly says. The one from the National School of Biological Sciences and the one from Medicine, as I understand. Within this, well, they talk about a misappropriation of the budget, among other things. Well, it's obviously important. We'll see what the reaction is about it. In the meantime, let's move on to other important matters. The case is remembered, a very curious case, not like a fun fact. This is an older report, but it's interesting to revisit reports from the past, and a case that has been brought up again lately. You've already seen it in several media outlets. It's a case we've already discussed here. About James Scott. Yes, this individual. Look, let's see if we can put him on the screen. It's this individual. Let's see if it's this one. If I can see him with a slightly smaller image. This gentleman right here. This gentleman right here. A person who was sentenced to life in prison for flooding a town. I mean, this already happened back in 1993. Yeah, I'm sure they reported it around 8 o'clock at night on July 16th. A levee broke on West 15 where, well, it's on the Mississippi River. There was a barrier there. The levee on West 15 collapsed suddenly, causing a devastating flood. The disaster would have swept through thousands of hectares, destroying key infrastructure and causing estimated losses of between $15 and $20 billion. Just imagine, look at this. Amid the chaos, suspicion arose that this man, who at that time was 24 years old when it happened, James Scott, was volunteering to help reinforce the levee. The accusation was really crazy because they accused Scott of sabotaging the levee to prevent his wife from coming home so he could keep partying with his friends. According to the prosecutor, Scott removed protections from the levee and created a channel to let the water through, causing the collapse. However, there was never any physical evidence, no direct evidence, no recordings, no fingerprints, and no eyewitnesses to the alleged sabotage. The conviction was mainly based on indirect testimonies and also because he had a reputation for minor offenses. In 94, he was sentenced to life imprisonment under the law designed to punish man-made disasters associated with terrorism and serious sabotage. Even though a court overturned the first conviction due to irregularities, a second trial found him guilty after just 3 hours of deliberation and without a thorough investigation. Engineering experts said it was practically impossible for a single person to destroy a dam of that magnitude. They pointed out that either there were natural causes or there was a lot of water pressure. That's what the engineers say. The engineers. The flood affected the entire region. More than 1,000 dams failed, and about 54,000 people were evacuated. This reinforces the theory that the disaster wasn't because of him, but rather it was a massive disaster. But he has become famous for being that person who supposedly caused a flood in a town. To get away with it and keep partying, right? Supposedly, the case still causes division. Do people still remember this case? Well, it is to make people understand that sometimes there are cases of injustice like this. He spent 3 decades in prison and is waiting for a parole hearing in July of this year. That's why the case has come up again this year. He could be released. Up until now, after 30 years, he still maintains his innocence to this day. He says he is innocent and has insisted on it for, well, 30 years. Well, that's today's curious case. Let's move on to the comments. How have you all been? Thanks for joining me in these 3 live streams. Updates that, well, we keep doing throughout the day. Cebola, how have you been both in live streams and recordings, which we try to keep uploading here to update what's happening in the world? Great. Greetings to Cebola, to Eliseo, and how have you been? Very good. MKMTK, and yes, I think China was the one who brought it out. He says, how have you been? What a thing, he says. The Ukrainians have to redirect all their personnel and their resources. This creates a zone to eliminate many enemies before they get into position. Or the Russians, he says. How have you been, Francisco? Hello there. Who else is around here? Greetings to the whole community that's joining in later as well. Thank you so much for watching us afterwards. Francisco Vice Vix Escasa, how have you been? Hey? Many thanks to the channel members. Thank you, because this community of members is largely what makes this channel possible. It's the result of combined efforts, right? A community that subscribes, others who can support us with membership, another community that isn't subscribed but comes here every day. We thank everyone as well, right? Hey, how have you been? And Trump just speculates and makes millions in profits with his millionaire friends by making statements that make the market go up and down. It's a topic that will have to be investigated thoroughly because there are clearly signs that there's constant manipulation, which has basically been the big business of a group of people who are obviously close to President Trump. It's a topic that he's already been accused of several times, but it's a topic that will have to be investigated. The White House recently had to come out and say be careful with those speculations. I mean, kind of trying to save face a little bit on that issue. It's a huge issue. Greetings and thanks for the comment. Josh, great to see you, Claudio. Big hello. It's good to see you, Claudio. To you and the whole team at the radio station. Obviously, I send you a big greeting. Gisela Hints, how have you been? Rigoberto Bermudez, big greetings to you too. He says, greetings, I hadn't commented live before, but I watch all the live shows. Thank you so much, Rigoberto. And thanks for daring to comment for the first time. So, Juan Carlos, how have you been? Greetings to Argentina. Thank you for your comment, Guillermo Escobar. And greetings to you and the entire community joining us. Well, a big greeting, and later on we'll be back with another update. Hi, Carlos. Shout out to Tijuana. Awesome, Dorian Enix. Greetings to you too. Greetings, Dorian. How are you? I hope you're well. Well, we'll see you in a little while. See you later.